If you're in sales, if you own a business, if you're trying to grow anything right now, you've heard the complaints. Leads are too expensive. Facebook ads don't work like they used to. The market is soft.
It's the easiest excuse in the book.
Well, everyone is sitting around complaining about the cost per acquisition going up. There are people quietly making a killing off of free leads.
All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Fitz and Franson Show. I'm Fitz.
Yeah, and I'm Franson.
This is a show where we talk about leadership, business, growth, and what it actually takes to build something that lasts.
Yeah, without losing your mind or your margins in the process.
Yeah, that's especially important, the margins part there.
And look, if you're in sales, if you own a business, if you're trying to grow anything right now, you've heard the complaints. Leads are too expensive. Facebook ads don't work like they used to. The market is soft.
It's the easiest excuse in the book. Blame the algorithm, or blame the economy, or blame you, Jay. Right, the lead provider.
Yeah, I've had my fair share of conversations about me being the problem. But while everyone is sitting around complaining about the cost per acquisition going up, there are people quietly making a killing off of free leads. And today we're going to talk about exactly how they're doing it.
Yeah, because free doesn't exactly mean easy, right? It just means you're trading hustle and strategy instead of cash. And honestly, the free leads usually close at a higher rate, and that's a positive thing, obviously.
All right, so I'm going to throw a hot take out there, Fitz, right out of the gate. I think traditional canvassing, knocking on doors, it's dying. I think if you want free leads today, you have to be doing TikTok lives, Facebook lives, and doubling down on the new local For You page aspect on TikTok. The organic reach is actually working right now. So why walk a neighborhood when you can reach the whole zip code from your phone?
Well, so I'm going to disagree with you here. I think I think you're actually dead wrong. Is social media powerful? For sure, right? But the moment you start to tell a sales team, rather, that door knocking is dead, what you're really doing is you're giving them permission to hide behind a screen, right? There's nothing that replaces the psychology, in my humble opinion, of standing face to face with a homeowner. And I don't think you're going to be able to convince me otherwise.
Yeah, but Fitz, look at the scale of it. I go live on TikTok right now and tag my location. I can have 500 local homeowners watching me explain a common problem in my industry in 10 minutes. You can't knock on 500 doors in 10 minutes.
Sure, but does scale really matter if the connection is weak? I mean, I'll take 5 solid face-to-face conversations over 500 passive, just doom scrollers any day of the week. Because look, when I'm on a porch, Jay, and I can have the opportunity to shake somebody's hand and read their body language, I can see the problems on their house. I get an opportunity to build some immediate rapport and undeniable trust in that experience.
Okay. All right. So I guess I see that the meathead sales guy's coming out here. So let's break it down then, because I think the truth is that the winners are actually doing both. But let's start with your world. So let me interview you for a second here. If I'm a rep or a business owner and my lead flow just dried up, I have $0 for ads. What is the actual step-by-step playbook for generating free leads the old school way?
I resent that you're referring to me as old school here. If we're going to pause for a minute, but we'll slide past it. All right. So look, I think it comes down to two things, right? Canvassing with intent and aggressive referral extraction. Right. So let's start with the canvassing part. Most people suck at knocking doors because they treat it like a numbers game instead of putting some sort of strategy behind it.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, shoot, I saw somebody in my neighborhood earlier today doing this. They're just kind of like aimlessly walking around. And if you want to generate good, true free leads, you have to use some sort of method. So there's a couple of different names for it, but you probably have heard of like the cloverleaf method. So think about if you just sold a job, or even if you just did an inspection and you hit the 5 houses across the street and the 2 on either side. You aren't selling them a roof or a remodel in this example. You're selling them information that you're going to do work for their neighbor, John, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation could sound something like this. Hey, we're getting ready to do some work for your neighbor, John, and there's going to be some noise and maybe some debris or something like that that could blow, into your neighborhood. Here's my card. If the guys, happen to block your driveway with a truck, do me a favor, give me a call. It helps to drop the defenses immediately. It's not necessarily like a sales pitch or something along those lines.
That's interesting. So that's a pretty significant psychological shift. You aren't actually a salesperson in this situation. You're like a considerate project manager.
Yeah, it's kind of like an excuse our mess or excuse our noise. We're trying to add to the neighborhood, not take away from it here in this example, right? So that's one. And the second piece is that referral piece. And
Mm,
look, the reality of it is most reps they suck at asking for referrals or they just don't do it altogether. And
mm,
like I said, those that do end up sounding like a beggar at the end of this. And hey, do you know anybody that needs windows? It just comes across weak and like we don't
mhm.
have enough business to go around. You have to build to the referral ask into an actual like process. You have to build it into an actual sales process. You ask when they are at their peak state of happiness. Usually that's going to be right when the job is finished being installed, or maybe right after they've gotten done signing their paperwork and they feel kind of that ultimate sense of relief, like they're finally done and going to be taken care of at that moment.
Okay. Okay. I'm following along. So maybe help out our listeners with a prompt or a question that they could use today to get more referrals.
Sure. I mean, look, generally people like to help other people out that have helped them, right? And if you're a salesperson that's not going back to visit your installs, you're missing a really great opportunity. And if you're not going back there with some sort of intent of trying to get a referral or two, you're really missing a huge opportunity. This would be one that I would write down. I wrote it down when it was taught to me. When you go back into a neighborhood to visit an install, take the opportunity to observe some of the houses on the way back in and take some notes of those houses, right? So you sell windows, you sell roofing, you sell siding, whatever it might be. Take a note of the house with the red door, the house with the oak tree in the front yard, whatever it might be that has an issue with the windows or the siding or the roofing, right? Whatever it is you sold. Take your time, walk around the project with the homeowner, talk about how exciting it is that the change is happening for them, talk about how happy you are for them, and ask if there's anything else you can help them out with. And then the conversation goes something like this, hey, Mr. Jones, do you mind if I ask you a favor? And before I do, let me preference it this way. I'm going to do this regardless of what your answer is. So if you're not comfortable with it, I totally understand. But when I was coming in, I noticed that the house across the street over there with that red door, it looks like they might need a roof too. And like I said, I'm going to go knock on that door regardless and introduce myself. But if you happen to know them and you wouldn't mind introducing me to them, man, I would really appreciate that. Do you happen to know who lives there? Jay, I tell you, I would do this like probably once a month. Well, I would go to installs more often than that, but once a month I would have this conversation and somebody would go, "Oh, yeah, that's Bill. I know Bill. Bill definitely needs a
Mhm.
roof. Let's go talk to him." It's funny. I remember this one time we went and I don't remember if it was actually Bill or not, but just for the story's sake, we'll say it was Bill. We go up. These two guys had very clearly a very close relationship. And the guy comes up and he goes to knock on the door and he knocks on it like full fist, like it was
Yeah.
a police raid, and then
Hmm.
like ducks and hides behind me. This guy comes storming to the door,
Yeah.
opens the door, goes, "What?" And I was like, I didn't do that, right? And the homeowner that I had, that was my customer stands up and goes, "Bill, you need a roof. Listen to this guy. Your roof's terrible." And I was like, we've skipped way ahead in my normal process, but it is pretty bad. You do need a roof, kind of thing. Would you
Yeah.
like to hear how we helped out Mr. Jones over here? Again,
Mhm.
it was a fun story, but I would tell you, once a month, once every other month or something along those lines, I would get a warm introduction. But at the very least, I'm going to go knock on some of these doors. Hey, we were able to help Mr. Jones out. Here's my card. He did mention that if you want to ask him a few
Mhm.
questions, you can go ask him a few questions. That was at the very least a warm handoff that I would get. Here's my card. Talk to them,
Yeah.
see if it's something that might interest you and give me a call. I would get a couple of calls throughout the year and definitely a few
Mhm.
sales as a result. And all it took was me taking an hour out of my day to stop by an install, say thank you for trusting me with your home, and then another
Mhm.
5 minutes to go knock on the door. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's gold. I get a lot of my customers that call me and maybe it's a lull in the paid media side and maybe lead costs are up or just volume is down and they're like, the calendar's looking thin. What do we do? And it's always nice to share stories like that with them where I go, hey, this is something you can be doing that doesn't really cost you much more than time. And I know one of our dealers, he does a door knocking, the cloverleaf thing, where he gives a $10 coffee gift card. Says, "Hey, we're going to be making noise. Have a coffee on
Mhm.
us." Yeah, it's a pretty low cost of entry, and it's that relationship buildings. Well, let me ask you a personal question, Fitz. Yeah, that's what we do here. We're open books for the public,
Yeah.
but think back to when you were first grinding it out just a few years ago. What's the most brutal, humbling experience you had trying to drum up free leads, and maybe what did you learn from it?
Yeah. Well, shortly after I got that advice and wrote that stuff down early in my career, I was trying to do anything I could to work my way up the ladder, so to speak, on the leaderboard. And look, not all of those door knocks go as well or as have a funny story as the experience with Bill there across the street. So I
Yeah.
was in a neighborhood, and leads were light, so I took the time to knock on quite a few more doors. And I was newly married at that time, so I needed every dollar I could get. But it was dead of summer. It was hot as hell. And I was going door to door and getting them slammed in my face, sweating profusely through my shirt, questioning just about every life decision I had made that led me to this spot. And I was, I think, about ready to call it quits and knocked on, I think, one more door. And a guy just absolutely, absolutely unloaded on me. The phrase, I think, was get a real job. And before I could even get a word out of my mouth, right? And,
Yeah,
look, I'm a homeowner. I get it. People knock on our doors on a regular basis, and it wasn't fun. It's a nice reminder of what, your team goes through on the calls that the sales guys don't have to deal with, or canvassers who are doing this on a regular basis go through as well, too. But,
yeah.
look, it was a good lesson, right? It taught me that rejection isn't really the end of the world, right? It's kind of just a stat or a data line, that we can look at and
Mhm.
mark off as, hey, this is something that it takes to get to the next one. It wasn't the end of the world, so to speak. So I share my story. So I'm going to ask you, right? When did you realize that you had to, I don't know, figure out the digital side here? Because maybe that traditional side of sweating through your shirt and beating the streets was too slow for you, Jay.
Oh, there is only so many hours in the day. Like I said earlier in our chat here, with paid media or with Facebook Lives or whatever, the reach is so much greater. And so you're watching guys hustling twice as hard and they're making half as much. And I realized that there's only so much you can do if you're out there knocking on doors. And so I really was like, shoot, what are the opportunities in front of me with going digital?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let me do this. Let's flip the script here a little bit. You're the digital nerd here in the partnership we
Hmm.
have. So you say I'm living in the Stone Age. If
Hmm.
I'm a contractor or a sales pro, how am I going to get free leads from my phone right now today?
Yeah. So right now, there's opportunities right now that goes back, 5 or 10 years on the social media space where it used to be if you had 1,000 page followers, it was valuable. You could post to your page, the algorithm would just push your content out. It was free. People would engage with you. And with TikTok coming out a couple of years ago, they really shifted from images and posts to videos. And so right now, Meta and TikTok are really favoring if you go live. And TikTok's recent like stateside acquisition, in that process, they added a local for you page. And so if you go live locally, you're actually going to be seen locally. And in the marketing, the paid media side, we've messed around with TikTok in the home services. It hasn't been great. It's been more of a knowledge space or e-com.
Mhm.
You can go there and share your thoughts, or you can share, hey, this bottle of, magic elixir saved my life. Order it on the TikTok shop. But recently, with the local stuff, you're given an opportunity to just turn your phone towards yourself and say, hey, here I am at such and such neighborhood. And you're going to be promoted on those platforms for free.
Wow. All right. So that's kind of insane when you think about it. So you're basically kind of doing some neighborhood canvassing digitally,
Hmm.
essentially, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you can go live from a job site. We were actually just talking to a roofing company earlier today about this, and they said a lot of roofs a week, and you don't really need the script. I think that's another interesting thing that's worth noting is I don't know how these algorithms work. I'm a nerd, but not that big of a nerd, right? Like there's a way for these systems to recognize if the UGC, the user generated content, is digitally altered, and they actually prefer that it looks as authentic as possible. And customers are they're craving authenticity.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, Fitz, our show's a great example. You and I are not polished speakers
No.
by any means, but we're right. Don't tell the
Yeah.
audience, but we're gaining a following of faithful listeners that are like, hey, I like that you guys are just real and you speak what's on your mind, and and so you can do the same thing as a business owner. I've talked to a lot of business owners that are like, I can't be on camera, but it's pretty simple. You go, hey, I'm here in Meadow Park neighborhood, and I want to show you guys why this, let's say, 15-year-old roof is failing, or I want to show you guys what we're about to do for this customer's garage floor coating.
Right.
You walk them through the problem. It doesn't have to be very long. The Facebook Live can be a couple of minutes, and then because of these favoring of live videos on Meta and TikTok, it's going to be pushing that out locally. So the neighbors, if they happen to be on their phone at the time, are going to see it. And the neat thing is the notification. A lot of people have notifications turned on their
Hmm.
phone. They're going to get a notification that says so and so's live right
Hmm.
now. So I mean, it's one of the few things right now that's like technically free on social media.
So what you're saying is we can stop practicing like our TikTok dance routine with all of the like lights and shows and stuff. We don't need all that.
No, no, and then the algorithm favors it,
Okay.
you know?
That's disappointing because I was getting
Yeah,
pretty good,
that's
Jay.
funny. Yeah, I know, I started to pay dance
That
lessons for
that's it.
myself.
That's non-refundable too, if we're being honest. So so again, so
Yeah.
it's an opportunity, I think, for those that are listening. It is a way to digitally canvas. And I think you mentioned something earlier in a conversation we were having that was really interesting. There's some companies out there that are doing it really well, where they're empowering, or not even really empowering, but it's kind of part of their standard operating procedures, where they have project managers and salespeople and service techs that are almost kind of required to be part of this. Not even required, but it's becoming part of their culture. And it's kind of strengthening that
Mhm.
reach and strengthening that marketing effort that, hey, you're on site, like go live and tell the story about what you're doing there, and almost educate the
Yeah.
community about not just who we are, but what we do, and answer some of the questions they might have. So it is a kind of that like
Yeah.
digital canvassing locally, and you're picking off one or two or three neighbors in that neighborhood in that moment. That's kind of what you're
Mhm.
describing, right?
Yeah, and another kind of added bonus to it is the nature of it. You end up kind of having the customers self-qualify.
Mm,
If they pause to watch your video and you're generating them a couple of days a week, then they're going to come to you already kind of self-educated from your content. And then they're going to be like, oh, hey, I live in the neighborhood you were just in. Can you come look at my house, or, my windows or my floor? Right.
yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's a pretty highly qualified lead. There's no doubt. So, all right, look, I'll admit that
Hmm.
that's powerful, pun intended, I guess there. But
Hmm.
but what about those guys who are scared to be on camera?
Yeah, right. Look at you and I. I mean, get over it,
Yeah.
right? Seriously. A lot of them, and I think that employees have the opportunity to be the face of the brand just like the
Hmm.
owner. There's some smaller companies out there where the owner is active in his community and he's the one that's bravely stepping out into that digital facing the camera place. But, really people buy from people.
Hmm.
And if you're afraid to show your face on a Facebook Live, you're leaving tons and tons of opportunities on the table.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be difficult. It's document what you're doing. You don't have to create a Hollywood production. Like I said earlier, you actually can almost get penalized if you try and make it too polished. The algorithm will go, "Oh, this is an ad. It's clearly an ad. We're not going to promote it like we would promote a raw video." And so then you get to, document the reality of the work and create relationships in your community.
Yeah, that's cool to know. I think one of the things we were looking at earlier is in one of our daily rundowns of what people are actively searching for right now. And one of those biggest, like the biggest search trends, is how to know if a contractor is ripping me off. It's a wild thing to see that that's what people are searching for.
Yeah, and it's another huge opportunity for content. If you want free leads, you need to answer the questions your customers are secretly Googling.
Yeah, exactly. From a salesperson's perspective, if I'm a rep in the field right now, I'm going to take phrases like that and try to become the expert, or like the sought after opinion in that. So I'm going to make a video or knocking on a door and saying, like, here are three red flags that a contractor is taking advantage of you, right? And you instantly are going to position yourself as the trusted advisor and not kind of that like sleazy salesperson, right? Be the person that they find when they
Mhm.
search those words or those phrases.
Yeah. And this ends up kind of being that ultimate pattern interrupt. Marketers are always looking for the next magic bullet that pierces through the busy noise on social media. And we're like, how do we say the words just right or get the image just right? And so when you actually advocate for the consumer against the shady parts of your own industry, you win all the trust.
Yeah, I think we talk about finding ways to kind of stand out in the sea of the same, right? And it can be a little nerve wracking. You and I didn't really enjoy the idea of being on camera, but you start to get comfortable with it, and you just be a little bit different by almost just being who you are. It's kind of funny, like you be different by being the
Yeah.
same, right? So
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
wild thing. So look, I think for the listeners out there, whether you're I don't know whether you're pounding the pavement or I don't know using that clover leaf method like a real man, Jay.
No. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or whether you're using digital leverage and the local FYP to reach thousands of people at once like a smart man.
Yeah. All right. The point is that free leads are out there, right? And but they require you to stop complaining about the market and really start kind of I don't know doing something about doing some actual work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, wait for it here. There is a catch. You can generate all of these free leads, but if you don't know how to handle the price objection when you sit down at the kitchen table, you're just wasting your time.
Jay, it always comes
Yeah,
back to
yeah,
us sales
yeah,
guys,
right?
buddy. That's it, man. It's the
Yeah,
truth. Isn't that the truth? Look, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about and cover next week. So we're going to break down that exact psychology of the price roll or price presentation, whatever you might call it in your organization, and hopefully how to help neutralize that it's too expensive or that's more than we thought it was going to be objection before they even get a chance to say it to you. So you really don't want to miss that one.
Yeah. And just a reminder to all of our listeners, if you haven't hit the like and subscribe button yet, rang the bell, shared an episode or two with your friends, we'd really appreciate it. If you guys want to reach out to Fitz or myself and maybe even discuss some of these ideas that we covered in this show further, we'd love to hear from you. So until then, stop making excuses and go get some attention. Thanks for tuning in to the Fitz and Franson Show.
Absolutely. Happy hunting, everybody.